Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Motherwell are managerless. A weekend of Scottish Cups from Well and Livingston, with Championship sides celebrating big upsets. Mad Malik Tillman causes a tizzy, but there was no party for Partick, with Beale having the last laugh. And Celtic fans really don't like Douglas Ross. A warm welcome to you listeners who join us in the hope of hearing some sound, sage, footballing wisdom, but in fact get surly Scottish expats desperate for home comforts. But this is why we do it, to talk about the guff and the great about our wonderful game. I'm Andrew Slaven, and joining me again in our virtual technical area is the bear with no hair. He's football filmmaker, Findlay Marks.
That's one of the weirdest intros I've ever had. And yeah, thanks very much for that.
And, in fairness, in utter disgust at Michael Beale's generosity at the weekend, it's West Ham senior producer Laura Brannan. And Laura, it's true, you sent a message on our WhatsApp saying we have to record now. I need to get on and record this podcast after Rangers Partick Thistle.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk about this game and these two goals. So controversial.
Wild
Cannot
goals.
wait. And I've not spoke to Finn about this yet, but I'm just hoping that he doesn't agree with me, because I'm up for the fight tonight.
Up for the fight. It was an emphatic win for Celtic at the weekend in the Scottish Cup. I say emphatic, it was still took quite a while for them to get going against St Mirren. But they've created a lot of noise, guys, about a certain banner. Celtic are well known for their pretty creative banners. And this one is, I don't know, not so creative, but I don't know, funny or crass, Laura? What do you think? Do you want to describe it for us?
Yeah, okay, let's still keep it within an under 18 rating podcast. But basically the banner from the Green Brigade says VAR decision. Douglas Ross, who for context is the leader of the Scottish Tory Party and also a linesman. First time back at Celtic Park as well since he took over as the leader of the Tories. So I think it was the first time in 3 years he's been there. Leading the line facing the Green Brigade. And it said very explicitly that Douglas Ross is a bleep. It's a very naughty word.
A very naughty word. One of the worst words, some might say. Or maybe the best word, some might say.
It was just straight to the point. No beating about the bush. Straight to the point.
Finn, have you seen this banner? What do you think?
The reaction to it online, I think, broadly has been a lot of people find it very funny. Especially, the composition of the photograph where you've got Douglas Ross running the line, looking directly at this banner.
That's pretty special.
I've got to say, I find it a little bit crass. It's more just on a personal point of view. I'm not a massive fan when people put swear words and things like that into banners, not just at football matches. I just think anything that's a public space, especially if you're going to have, as Celtic Park has, or many other stadiums across the country, a lot of families, a lot of kids there. To me, it's a little bit lowest common denominator. And I'm also not a massive fan, irrespective of your views on someone and what they're like as a person. Personal attacks, I also find a little bit, I'm not a massive fan of as well. So while I guess the sentiment has been widely enjoyed by not just Celtic fans, but the wider Scottish community, I did find it a little bit offensive and a little bit crass, I've got to say.
I'm going to come in with the opposing argument here. I've seen the reaction from pretty much every span of supporter across Scotland. Laughing, clapping, congratulating it, all sorts of positive feedback. I think in this sense, I'm the last person that wants to mix politics with football, but if you're the leader of the Tory party, which is universally hated in Scotland, if you're the leader of that party and you decide to work in football, at the top flight of football as well, and at a ground which is very, very not right-wing, I think you have to accept that you're going to come in for a little bit of criticism and targeted sometimes. And in this case, pretty much across the board, everyone agreed with the sentiment. So there's been some banners the Green Brigade have kind of come up with that's been controversial. This one, I think we just laugh at this and let it slide and move on.
It's interesting. If anything, the timing was excellent. They obviously knew that, like you said, Lara, this was the first game Douglas Ross was taking part in Celtic Park since he became leader. But there you go. Football fans have impeccable timing. Other thing that's on my desk right now is that Martin Boyle loves rugby.
Did you see this?
I honestly have to say I didn't.
I didn't either.
Like, I'm not the biggest rugby fan, but I'm a big Scotland fan. Whether we're playing any sport, to be honest, or just, a little race down the street. In case you've not caught up with what's happening in the Six Nations, Scotland have won 2 games out of 2. Martin Boyle was at the game at Murrayfield on Saturday when Scotland beat Wales, in the stand as the Scotland players are going up to collect Doddie Weir Cup at the end of the game for winning this game. And he's standing there like a proper little fanboy with his phone up, taking a photo of the rugby player. I don't know his name, right? I'm not good up in the team names. But he's lifting the cup and he is standing right behind him with his phone up, taking a photo. Like, I am your number one fan and I am starstruck by this. And it was just kind of nice to see someone who has himself stepped up on a podium to lift a trophy with fans worshipping for it, and suddenly you're seeing the other way around. It was just kind of sweet. Kind of liked it. Even though apparently he's not Scottish, remember, he's Australian now.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I like how we put this in the funny section, Laura, but it's actually just you being like, "Aw, isn't that nice?" This is like an "aw" section for you.
I'm just happy Scotland have won 2 games out of 2. It's a good run so far.
It's a very good run. Very good run. Well, this is a football podcast, Laura. All right, so we're going to bring it back to the football.
Regrets? No, it's a good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
This week was quite interesting on Twitter because there was news, guys, that came out of a new Scotland top. And I have to say, if anyone hasn't seen it, and I'm sure anyone who listens to this podcast will know what I'm talking about, this looks like the most sexy Scotland top I have probably ever seen.
This is just oozing in class. This top is going to be selling ridiculously.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's really simple. It's just plain dark blue with a white neckline, and it's got the old style crest on it. I think the only bit for me is the sleeves have kind of blue lines through it, so it almost has a kind of sailor look to the sleeves, which is the only part for me that is a wee bit. It's even just been pure white, it'd have been perfection. But you know what? From a distance, you're not going to see that. This kit is beautiful.
I think that was the thing for me. It's like 98% perfect Scotland football shirt. It's just the fact, because it's Adidas, right? So Adidas have to get their little 3-stripe in there somewhere. Usually it's on the arms or whatever. If that was just a solid white band, it would be flawless, like 100% perfect Scotland shirt. I think for me, it's like you're saying, it's the crest, because it's like embossed blue. It's almost like recessed into the kit.
Yeah.
I just think it's absolutely perfect. Although I'm kind of like, this isn't technically the 150th year, is it? It was last year.
That's right.
So why was this not brought out last year? We playing it for a whole year rather than a one-off against England.
I find this, well, the thing is, they've not actually confirmed what the deal is with this top. All the marketing has said is 150 years coming soon. And they've kind of let the rest of it just go with like our imagination. And we've all just sort of jumped to the conclusion of, I guess it's pretty obvious, like we're going to wear it against England in that sold out game in September. But this is technically the 151st year. Why did we not bring it out as our Saint Finn for the Euro 2024 qualifiers last year in terms of the Nations League and the full campaign this year? The strip we've brought out is, it's just, we could have held that one, the purple one, and brought out this 150th year anniversary kit and had it for the full 2 years, and it would have been stunning. And just using it for one game, I get how it's special, but I want to see it all the time.
Nah, don't get bogged down by the details. We should be more like Napoli. Napoli played on Sunday night against Cremonese, and it was their 7th different kit of the season. We should be more like that. We should just have like loads of different Scotland kits in 1 year. I'm up for that.
Look, if they're £10 each, I'm all for that. But no, they're like, what, 60, 70 quid right now?
Moving on, guys, let's slag off Georgios Giacomakis because he's slagging us off. So tit for tat, right? So he joined MLS side Atlanta. In his first press conference, he criticises the Scottish game, saying the competition is not so good. There are 2 clubs and all the other clubs tried to defend.
It was kind of an interesting thing because I'd heard about it before I'd actually listened to him saying it, if that makes sense. You know, you see the headlines and you read things on Twitter or whatever, you know, you instantly get defensive, don't you? You're just like, who's this yaff having a go at the Scottish League, blah, blah, blah. But then, like, I mean, listening to it, he kind of does have a point, because you can't really say as objectively as you can to the outside world, it doesn't seem more than a 2-team league. I mean, really, it's been a 1-team league for the last 10 years, hasn't it? So I think it was kind of clumsy the way that he said it, but I think it is a bit unfair, I think, to just be like, there are 2 clubs and all the others just try to defend. It's not like that. I mean, given the resources and everything, there are just ways that teams try to set up to try and block the Old Firm when they're playing them. The thing that I just find interesting about this, and I think it was something that SPFL Watch said on Twitter, which was, you know, Giakoumakis is having a go at a league where he failed to outscore Reagan Charles Cook of Ross County in one of the seasons that he played here. So I think, like, given the way that Giakoumakis played, I think if he'd played in Scotland and excelled, I think he did okay. I don't think he ever excelled. But if he come here and excelled and gone to another league saying the Scottish League's terrible, it doesn't work. But the fact is, you know, he didn't score. I think he scored an okay number of goals. I don't think he scored usually against high-level opposition. Did he even score a European goal for Celtic? And I don't think he scored in an Old Firm game. So, you know, he did score some important goals. They tended to be against teams at the bottom end of the table. But yeah, it's just when a player comes to Scotland, doesn't do brilliantly, and then criticises it, I think all of us just kind of have that pack mentality of like, who are you to talk about the Scottish game? Joey Barton's probably the elite level of that example.
Yeah, to me it's like that sort of mentality of, well, I can slag my sister off, but you're not allowed to. Like, I can say what I want about Scottish football. We're allowed to joke about it here when it's tin pot, but you're not allowed to come out with that, especially not when you're going to another country and saying that. It's a wee bit cheeky. And like, I guess, like, you're right. Like, what he's saying isn't actually wrong. It's the context, and it's that way of just, like, you're talking about 2 games, 2 fixtures out of 6 in the top flight every weekend. Fine, okay, yeah, it might be defensive, but you're not actually watching Hearts versus Dundee United or like Kelly against St Johnstone. They're not all defensive games. They're not bad games. It's just the games that he's personally been involved in. And because he's personally been subjected to that style of football, doesn't mean that Scottish football is bad. You look across any of the top leagues in Europe, you're going to have better teams at the top of the table running away with it. You're going to have that divide in all leagues. It's unfair to tarnish a whole league to be like that when our league is very competitive and very exciting. It just kind of irks me when you see foreign players come for a couple of seasons, not really set the world on fire and go away and then kind of badmouth this. It's just like, nah, this doesn't really sit right with me. Just have a wee bit of class.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a fair sentiment. Have a wee bit of class. But he was probably asked the question, what does he think of the Scottish game? And he just gave an honest answer. There's a lot of Celtic fans that absolutely love Georgios Giakoumakis. I don't know why I'm trying to full name him, but there you go. Elsewhere, somewhere we're going to touch on more in depth is Motherwell's meltdown. But if we look at the top of Motherwell, the chief executive, Alan Burrows, off to Aberdeen. Timing seems very strange, Finn. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I find this a bit of a weird one, because if I'm right in saying this, Laurie, you'll probably know better than I will, but I think Motherwell said that he'd basically planned to stay in charge until they'd find a successor, but now he's looking like he's starting at Aberdeen in like 2 weeks' time or something. I mean, the fans must be a bit annoyed about that.
Yeah, that was a kind of the murmurs after. So this came out a couple of weeks ago. We did talk about it in the time in the podcast, just about like how it was a surprise that Alan was resigning and how good a job he'd done at the club and how much of a loss he'll be to the club. But then what Motherwell did say at the time was, like, we're going to take our time, find a replacement. Alan's got obviously a notice period to work and he's going to be here until a successor is appointed, basically. And then it kind of comes out like this. It appears to be that since this resignation news came out, it seems to be that a lot of clubs have come in from. It's obviously generated interest naturally because of the job he's done at Motherwell. And it seems to be a kind of quick turnaround that Aberdeen have went, yep, we're going to snap you up. But on the flip side of that, it just means that Motherwell are going to lose him a lot sooner. So yeah, I think I've kind of seen murmurs like fans are kind of like, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to find a replacement that quickly? Is it realistic to get somebody in the door that fast? The timing of it's a wee bit strange, but like that's business. That's how the business world works. And I think it's really exciting actually for Alan. I think I've never been quiet in my support of Dave Cormack's kind of forward thinking in terms of like, you know, the whole kind of Atlanta connection he's got and how he tries to bring the kind of MLS touch to Scottish football. And Alan's got quite a similar mind in that sense. And I'm actually quite excited to see how the two of them work together, because if that's the way Aberdeen are going to go, that's only going to benefit Scottish football in the long run.
I completely agree with you, Laura. It was something that I was going to mention, just because I think where this is absolutely Motherwell's loss, it can only be Aberdeen's gain. And actually, even just on the podcast last week, we were talking in the wake of Jim Goodwin's sacking of the need for Aberdeen to get the appointment of their next manager right, but also the need to continually trying to change this off the field thing of moving Aberdeen, I think personally, further and further into where I think they should be as a 21st century football club in terms of the operations and the way that it's trying to be progressive and forward looking rather than potentially a bit more reactionary and kind of status quo maintaining that it's been in the past. So I think this is it'll be a really interesting thing to see how Alan Burrows does at Aberdeen. I think it's a terrific appointment from them. Obviously, it's a huge loss to Motherwell.
A mistake from Holt. Tillman clean through, round the goalkeeper, and can finish. And Partick Thistle are absolutely furious, but Malik Tillman has put Rangers 2-1 up. Furious scenes at Ibrox Stadium.
Right, on to some absolute madness in the cup now. Not just the Stevie Hamill departure at Motherwell. We're going to stick to the football for now. Partick Thistle didn't just score once at Ibrox, they got 2 goals and still went out. No mean feat, I must say. But the second one comes in really weird circumstances. It is just bizarre. And what I have to say is, I just love the chaos afterwards.
It was. I mean, as a spectacle, this is exactly what you want from a Scottish Cup tie, right? You've got a Championship club against a top flight club. It's 2 clubs from Glasgow. Like, the away support from Partick Thistle was phenomenal at the game. I think they had was it just short of 4,000 fans or something? It was an amazing support. Yeah. Just a great atmosphere. You know, the game had everything. There were penalties, all of them of which shouldn't have been given, in my opinion. There was some pretty snappy tackling. There was all the rest of it. The incident you're talking about is Malik Tillman. So I actually don't think Malik Tillman knows what's going on, first and foremost. And I think Michael Beale made reference to that after the game. But what happens is he's kind of, he's fouled. He's actually, if you watch it again, he's actually stamped on. So it's interesting that VAR didn't pick that up. But the ball goes out because I think it's Cholak kicks out because he thinks Tillman's down, injured, and wants to get a look. So everybody's expecting, and as is the custom, Partick Thistle will take the throw in and kick it back to Alan McGregor to give Rangers back possession. What kind of happens is a bit of a comedy of errors, I think, where Malik Tillman's still on the ground when the ball goes out, so he doesn't know the ball's been kicked out by a Rangers player. So he doesn't know that there's supposed to be this element of sportsmanship in this incident where Partick Thistle will kick the ball back. Also, I've never seen anybody control a throw-in quite as badly as the Partick Thistle defender did. Because he has 3 touches, I think, and all of them are absolutely howling. Honestly, it's like a brick wall. And the ball actually bounces about 8 yards in the direction of Malik Tillman, who then challenges for the ball and runs through a goal and scores and is then, pummeled to the ground. But then obviously it goes to the touchlines. There's a bit of a furor on the touchlines as well. And Michael Beale makes the decision to ask his team, can you just let Partick Thistle score? Because again, I think he said something after the game. He's like, that's not how we want to be seen to winning football matches.
Yeah.
So it was a bizarre set of circumstances. It would be interesting to get your thoughts on it, Laura, because I think in the end, probably, justice is done kind of thing. It's like nobody can have any complaints because if Partick Thistle feel aggrieved, it was sorted almost in the moment. So
before Laura comes in, I have to say, Scott Tiffoney, when he does score, I just love the build-up to it. The fact that Alan McGregor still makes it a little bit difficult for him. He stands in his way like a couple of times. And Scott Tiffoney is actually like pulling some tricks to get around him. It's just ridiculous.
I think I'm in the minority here, but I was outraged when I saw this. For me, I don't think Malik Tillman did anything wrong, because Thistle took quite a while stumbling over this ball, as you're saying, kind of fumbling around with taking this throw in. If he was aware of what was going on and thought, right, they're at it, they're actually going to try and keep possession here, absolutely fair play. He's went in, he's went, nah, I'm going to take this ball back. And see, even if he didn't, the idea is still to give Rangers possession back. And I get it, it's meant to be up the pitch where it's not a danger zone. But in the end, Rangers are still going to regain possession. The ball is in play. So what? Like, this whole sportsmanship stuff, it's like, come on, that went out the window when you cross the white line and you kick off the game. Can we stop being so polite to each other, please? He's got the ball, he's went in, he's scored. Do you know what? Just do better and save the goal instead of taking out your anger on him. On the flip side of this, then, the fact that the manager has actually told his team to go and concede a goal. Like, I know this has happened before in England, and not actually that long ago.
Leeds Aston Villa was, yeah.
I didn't actually see that, but I know what happened. Physically, I've never actually seen this happen before, and it is mind-blowing that a manager can stand there at a touchline and tell his players in a top-flight competitive match, in a serious football game, yeah, go and concede a goal. This is like something you'd hear in like Nigeria under-21s versus Thailand. Like,
whoa.
On like a Tuesday 11 a.m. kickoff on some obscure channel. Right?
Bit harsher.
That shouldn't happen in Scottish football. And the fact that he is just like, yeah, go and score and equalise it. I'm sorry, that is just no. Can we just have rivalry, please, and stop being so polite?
Well, you have a rivalry with Nigeria now. You're now hated by Nigeria, that's
and
for
Thailand.
Sure.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I know, boiled. I actually have been involved in a game where a goal for my team was scored like this. University of West of Scotland football team, the second team, and we were playing Stirling, and they were like 9-0 up, and they kicked the ball out because the player was injured, and they threw it to their player, and our forward just nicked the ball and just scored an absolute perler of a goal from like 20 yards, right? And they went nuts at us. I was captain, and they were like, let us score. And I was like, no way, you're 9-0 up. It's 9-1. Like, who cares? Shut up. No chance. Like, and as you say, Laura, this was top flight university football.
Yeah.
So it can
It happened in it was a Celtic Motherwell game a couple of seasons back.
That's right. Yeah.
And James Scott, who's maybe not the biggest brains of Scottish football.
He went to Hull, didn't he?
Yeah,
for like £1 million or something like that.
He took the throw in and didn't realise that the kind of protocol in that sense. You know, he was very young and inexperienced. But yeah, he threw the ball in, and Motherwell went on to score from it. And we're a wee bit confused of why they were getting booed so roundly from the home supporters. But you know what? Motherwell didn't let Celtic go on and score. Actually, they did. They went on and scored another 2 and won the game. But in that moment, they were like, no, we scored a legal goal. Deal with it. And in this case, they did deal with it. So they got the last laugh.
More bizarrely, I suppose, in the aftermath of this result was the fact that Partick Thistle released a statement saying that they had parted company with Ian McCall. Now, McCall's his second stint at Firhill. He, won the Scottish League One, got Thistle back into the Championship, and he's still got over a 40% win ratio. It's bizarre. I know they haven't had a great season, but they're still 6 points off of second place. There's been turmoil off the pitch with the whole kind of ownership of the club. I personally don't feel this is based on results. Madness.
I completely agree. The timing of it, I just find a bit bizarre, especially like as soon as the game's finished. I don't know if there was some sort of agreement in place, but like you say, it's not as if they've had a disastrous campaign. I mean, they were top of the Championship, as have most of the teams been at one point or another during the season. It's an amazing division. But again, it's not just the on-the-field stuff, which I think broadly he's done a pretty decent job at Thistle over the last couple of years. Given the COVID
and they played
season
well
and
against
everything.
Rangers too.
Well, that's the thing, but it's not just that. I think he has a lot of credit in the bank with the Thistle fans because of the way that he was able to be quite an important figurehead for the club during what was quite a tumultuous period over the last couple of years with the demotion and all those kind of things. And I think he's been able to handle a lot of the toxic atmosphere that's been around Partick Thistle between the board potentially and the supporters groups. So yeah, I have to find it a bit of an odd one. I hope it's not long, and I'm sure it won't be long until he's back in the game at some level, because he's a terrific manager.
Yeah, he's also a character as well. I think it's a real loss just for Scottish football to lose a character like him. He's a great personality to have around, even when you don't take in the actual football side of things. This is a man that sang Breakfast at Tiffany's when they signed Scott Tiffoney. Just to have a manager that's willing to play ball like that and have a laugh, fair play to him.
He's also a manager who's played some vital roles in some footballers' careers. I know Stephen Dobie, for one, he was massive for Stephen Dobie at Queen of the South, a player who was kind of had a lot of promise and then disappeared. And Ian McCall was credited as one of those guys that made him the player that he was. And Lawrence Shankland as well, when he took him to Ayr United and really shaped him. You're right, Laura. I think he will be missed, but I don't think it will be long until he's back in management again. So.
Big men are up from the back. El Mahoney, right foot, whips it. Oh, Jeezy peeps, man.
The biggest result of the weekend goes to Raith Rovers, who sunk struggling Motherwell 3-1 in the Scottish Cup. It's a result that proved to be the final nail for Stephen Hamill, who was relieved of his managerial duties just a couple of hours later. Stuart Kettlewell has stepped up from his coaching role to take interim charge, and he's straight into action with the side taking on St Mirren in the league on Wednesday. To dissect this whole debacle, we are joined now by the Herald journalist and Motherwell season ticket holder, Graeme McGarry. Graeme, I believe you were there at Starks Park on Saturday. What was the feeling being there and the fallout afterwards?
Well, it was absolutely horrendous, Andrew, I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, it was just a really kind of strange afternoon where there was a big Motherwell support there. I was working, so I could see the kind of reaction from afar. And you sort of knew that if things didn't go well for Stephen Hamill and Motherwell on the day, that would likely be, he would likely pay for that with his job. And, as soon as the game started and you saw the sort of formation he had out, it just wasn't clicking straight away. And Raith Rovers, I mean, they deserved their win, there's no doubt about that. But as the game went on, the atmosphere just kind of got more and more poisonous.
Right.
And it was sad to see, because obviously Stevie Hamill's such a revered figure at Motherwell, and it was really quite sad to see him in that situation, and it looked as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. And I just wonder now if it's all a bit of a relief to him and to the fans as well. It's this very sort of bittersweet feeling, I guess, and Saturday night when he was relieved of his duties, because I don't think any Motherwell fan wanted that end for him, but at the same time, I think something had to give, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or they were going to sleepwalk towards relegation. So yeah, just a really sad state of affairs all round, unfortunately, apart from for Raith Rovers, who were fantastic on the day, to be fair to them, and thoroughly deserved it.
This result kind of felt like it was in the works, didn't it? We've kind of had the 3-0 defeat to Aberdeen, the 2-0 defeat to St Johnstone, both quite unforgivable given the circumstances and where these teams are compared to Motherwell. But this one's it's not even just the last couple of weeks, has it? It's been kind of brewing for quite a while now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when Stevie first came in, the performances, if not the results, definitely had an uptick. I think the football under Graeme Alexander towards the latter stages of his reign wasn't very easy on the eye, to say the least. And I think it was really refreshing when Stephen came in, and he sort of played this more expansive style. And if you remember, they went up to Pittodrie in August and they won 3-2, and they were playing forward passes, and Callum Slattery was bursting into the box, and it just looked as if, it was night and day compared to what went before. To compare that to Pittodrie last week, just showed the regression and the time period since, and how that's come about, I'm not really sure, but confidence looks absolutely shot. And I think probably for Stephen, the turning point, in my view, was the home game against Kilmarnock. They're 2-0 up. Alan Power does what Alan Power does and gets sent off. And from there, you're thinking this is an easy 3 points and Motherwell will be back in the kind of mix, pulling teams back in again. And they lose 2 goals. Sod's Law, Liam Polworth obviously scores from about 35 yards. And you just saw the kind of confidence just draining right out of him. And from that point on, the performances unfortunately matched the results. They fell off a cliff. And the St Johnstone game you referenced, probably the worst Motherwell performance I've seen probably since the Maurice Malpass days, going back that far. You know, it was really, really poor. And I get he chunked a lot of the new boys in, and it just didn't work. And it sort of, towards the end, it felt as if he was sort of throwing a lot of excrement at the wall, as they say, and hoping something would stick. And unfortunately, at the end, it was just excrement that was left. So, it's really it's really sad to see, but at the same time, I think it just ran its course, and a change had to be made.
As you're saying there, Graeme, like you're mentioning the atmosphere and the mood at the start of the season, and the performances were good. Like I left working for Motherwell in the summer, and I went back when I visited for the Scotland games in September. I popped into Fir Park, and it was the first time I'd really see them under Stephen Hamill, and the atmosphere was great. Everyone was happy. Everyone seemed really it was satisfied by the regime that he'd put in place, and the atmosphere was really good. Did you sense a change when you were there for press conferences and matches? Did you sense a change in mood and atmosphere around the place? Like what happened in those months?
I couldn't pinpoint one particular moment where things kind of took a turn south in terms of the atmosphere around the place, because I don't know if maybe what contributed to it was when they were playing well, the results weren't really there either, you know, and I don't know if maybe that shook Stevie's faith in what he was trying to do. If you remember, there was 2 matches. They played Dundee United at home. Van Veen missed a penalty and they drew 0-0. But they barred Dundee United that day. People were coming away for the game, even though they didn't get the 3 points. They were coming away really positive about what happened. And I think maybe just after that, they played Hearts at home and they lost 3-0. But again, I think if you remember at the time, it was Craig Levine was on the radio that day and he was saying Motherwell absolutely played them off the park. How that result came to be, we just don't know. But I did sense, even when he was trying to play a sort of attacking brand of football, there is a defensive fragility about Motherwell. They've not really settled in a centre-back partnership all season. Sondra Solholm's been in and out. Beavis McGarry's had injuries. Ricky Lammy's been the only one who's kind of been there most of the time, and I guess his form has really fell off a cliff a wee bit as well recently. So, yeah, it's just, it all came together to really dent the confidence. I think that what Stevie was trying to do wasn't getting the results. It shook his faith in it and maybe the players as well. But what I noticed in recent weeks going to press conferences was that Stevie, you could tell he was under pressure, you know. He's always been quite a serious guy, I guess, would be the way to put it. You know, you could tell that he wasn't probably particularly sleeping very much, and he was taking a lot of this to heart because everyone knows what the club means to him. But yeah, it just was this sense around the place in the last few weeks that there was no way to turn it around. You know, it just felt as if every week confidence was so low, and once you're in that groove, as Liam Kelly said on Saturday there, it's very difficult to pull yourself out of that hole.
It was very difficult, in fact, to listen to Liam Kelly in his post-match interview, and the way he was conducting himself. You could kind of feel he maybe saw it coming as well, and the guilt was there. And it's hard to see anyone in that position. But going on to players, Graeme, the number that Stephen brought in, 9 additions in January, that says to me, as someone from the outside looking in, that he needs more competition for places, but that he doesn't trust the players that he's currently got. Do you think now, even if someone comes in, and we'll go on to discuss who might come in, it's such a difficult job to try and get this Motherwell team going now? Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, I think you look at the point about the players. Yeah, Liam, I mean, I admire him for fronting up after the game on Saturday. I'm not sure how aware he was of what was going on behind the scenes, but I think it was pretty apparent to anyone there that as soon as Stevie didn't trap for his media duties, the writing was on the wall, you know. So when Liam came out, he spoke, he said all the right things, but I think what maybe a few Motherwell fans would be saying is that he's said a lot of this stuff about 7 months ago.
Yes.
That the players had let the managers down, you know, they were all trying very hard, they didn't know what was going wrong, and they couldn't explain why they were underperforming, and very much sort of taking ownership of it. But the fact that nothing's changed in that period suggests to me that, you know, a lot of the players need to do a bit of soul searching as well. And there is a core there that I've now seen 2 managers off the premises in the last 7 months. So the problems might run deeper than just who's in the dugout. Certainly it seems as if, as you said there, Andrew, Stevie Hamill thought that as well. So he's brought in 9 players. So. Yeah, he's been backed in the January window, but unfortunately, he's not really had the chance to blood those guys in just because of the circumstances that the Motherwell were in. They had to get results straight away, and I think I said that, you know, when he did throw them all in at the one time, I think there's 5 or 6 of them played in that St Johnstone game, the midweek game where they lost 2-0, and it could have been more. It just was throwing too many guys into the pot at the one time.
Some Motherwell fans might suggest that Stephen Hamill stepped up too early because he was director of the academy, wasn't he? And he's very well liked, the amount of players that he had kind of helped come through. But looking to the future now, Graeme, some of the names that are on the list, I'd like to hear what you might think is probably a good fit. I'll maybe start with maybe the cheaper options. Like the likes of Tam Courts. Obviously, Stuart Kettlewell is going to be in interim charge for a wee while, but he has decent pedigree. Jack Ross. Then you've got the likes of Neil Lennon and Paul Lambert is a name well known amongst Motherwell fans, but do you think any of those could be in the frame?
I think Paul, probably not. When the vacancy was up in the summer, I spoke to Paul and he said, you know, if he was approached, he might be quite, you know, open to it. But I think things have maybe changed since then, and he's looking at his options elsewhere. Jack Ross, I actually did an interview with him last week, and he was very much talking about maybe a future away from the dugout. He's doing a Masters in sports directorship, and I don't know if the experience at Dundee United has kind of soured him on it a wee bit. I just wonder though, in this circumstance, coming in so soon, particularly after Dundee United, to go into a relegation battle again, I'm not sure it would float his boat. As for the others, Tam Courts, I mean, I like Tam. I think he did a good job at Dundee United. However, what I would say is, in a similar vein to why Motherwell finished 5th last year, I think 4th was a wee bit of a false position for Dundee United. I know, you know, the league table doesn't lie, as they all say, that's the cliche, but at the same time, I think the standard last year of competition was quite poor. And I don't know if Tam, after his experience in Honved as well, coming into this situation, is the right man for it. It may surprise a lot of folk, but I think if they could get Neil Lennon, I think it would be quite a divisive appointment in terms of the fans. I think a lot of fans still don't like him from when he was charging about the midfield back in the day. But just in this situation, I think the situation calls for somebody who's got a bit of presence and gravitas about them and can unite this group. And Neil Lennon's got that, and I think he's massively overqualified for this position if you look at what he did at Celtic, and I think he'd be a real coup. But Jack Ross, Jim Goodwin maybe, or perhaps Neil Lennon, I think that would be my 3 that I would look at and go, you know, for the circumstances, those might be the 3 best available. I'm all for long-term thinking normally, but right now, Motherwell have got 14 games, I think it is, to get themselves out of a kind of apocalyptic situation, and they've got to get a guy who can do that by hook or by crook.
So finally, Graeme, we know on the pitch isn't great. Off the pitch isn't looking so great either with the situation of Alan Burrows. We've spoken about it earlier on in the podcast, but seeing this way, we have you, an avid Motherwell fan. I'd like to hear your take on the whole situation. Alan Burrows was supposed to be staying in his post until the end of the season. Now he's going to Aberdeen in a week and a half now. It's going to be strange not to have him around because he's made his name at Motherwell. Do you see someone who might be a good fit for that, and how urgent should they get someone in?
It's a shame that this is all sort of culminated at the one time. I should say off the bat that I used to go to games with Alan back when we were younger, so you know I'm not entirely.
So you're happy for him?
Yeah, I'm happy for I'm happy for him, grudgingly, yes. But no, listen, it's a great opportunity for him. It's just a shame that it's happened at this time, and it does give the impression of a club very much on the drift a wee bit and a wee bit rudderless on and off the park, unfortunately, at this moment in time. What is a wee bit alarming to myself, and I think we were asking this question Saturday when things were going a bit pear-shaped up at Kirkcaldy, who makes this call now, you know, and further to that, Aberdeen are looking for a manager, Motherwell are looking for a manager at this moment in time. So essentially Alan Burrows is sort of charged with both of those tasks. So, you know, it's a strange kind of state of affairs. I think there's a clear conflict of interest here, and I wouldn't be surprised if Alan was placed on sort of Ali McCoy style gardening leave for a few weeks, you know.
What, you mean he's not doing his interviews like in a halfway, you know, like somewhere around Tayside? Just do interviews for both jobs at the one time. You're
actually quite good, man. You can go to Pittodrie, and this guy who was my third choice, he could go to Mulham, you know. So it's one of them.
Burrow's the boss man.
Aye, I mean, it's a strange set of circumstances. So yeah, I think probably they need to get that sorted out toot sweet as well. As far as candidates go, well, I've no idea. I mean, you look at friend of the podcast, I guess, Grant Russell, who was there before.
Really?
Well, I mean, I think probably he's worked closely with Alan over those years, so he would certainly know the club inside out. Whether that's something that would interest him, I don't know. He's obviously been in a media role there in Motherwell before and down at West Ham now, so there's a name we throw into the mix for you. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of candidates come forward for it. But I think first and foremost, we need to get a manager in and get us out of this situation. But as you say, Andrew, it's concerning for everybody at the club that at the moment, a guy who seemed to be completely in with the bricks and no one ever really suspected would move on, certainly not for many years. It's quite alarming that he's decided to take the next step in his career, if you like. And off the back of that, obviously there was the £1 million loss 3 days later, announced in the accounts. I know there's still a strong balance sheet there in terms of the money in the bank, but you know, all these things are coming at the one time and giving the sort of impression that where is Motherwell heading after so many years of been patting the back for all the great stuff that they do in the community and, you know, a fan-owned club and doing so many things in the right way off the pitch. It just seems they're both off and on the pitch at the moment. There's just no direction.
You think I'm going to answer a stupid question like that?
Despite the Scottish Cup at the weekend, it was a really interesting one at the top of the Scottish Championship. League leaders Queen's Park were due to play Livingston in the Scottish Cup, but after being booted out for fielding an ineligible player, there was more disappointment on Saturday as they lost 3-2 away to Greenock. That opened the door to Dundee, who won 3-0 over Paul Hartley's Cove Rangers on Sunday. Dundee still have a game in hand as well, so could go top of the Championship. But Ayr as well are really right on the tails of both teams. It could be a really exciting run in the Championship, guys. Queen's Park also host Dundee in the final game of the season, and it could be, as we spoke to David from the Spiders Talk podcast, it could be in the new stadium. The final game of the season, guys.
Oh,
It's so, like, I don't know, I know there's still a third of the season to go, but it's shaping up really nicely. However, Queen's Park, they're in a bit of a mire at the moment.
This was like, yeah, I mean, they took the lead on Saturday as well. So it looked like, right. I mean, and if you've not listened to last week's podcast, the chat with David is really good because it's really insightful to show just how chaotic things are, both on and off the pitch just now. It's either way up here or way, way down there. There's no kind of happy medium right now with Queen's Park. The fact that game at the end of the season could be such a big one. I always kind of want them to keep top and tail with Dundee and just keep that competition going right now, because as we kind of mentioned on earlier, the Championship, you joked about every team's been top of the Championship at some point. It's true. It's such a competitive league. Queen's Park have had their time. They're kind of it's kind of dipping a wee bit just now. If they can have that big competitive finish, oh my God. And in their stadium, I don't know, there's something about being in the new stadium before next season. I kind of think, save it for your first game in the Premiership.
I don't know.
Make
it could be the
special.
what if it's the game to send them to the Premiership?
What a way to stamp your legacy on a new ground.
Absolutely. But then if you do lose, then holy sugar balls. It's going to be a tough one.
I think take the implementation of VAR approach in Scottish football. It's like, just open the stadium now. Doesn't matter if the doors are hanging off, if they haven't quite got all the health and safety stuff sorted. It doesn't matter. Just, it's ready. Just there. Just go for it. Just implement it.
We'll just learn on the job.
Here's a question for you guys, actually, about the Scottish Championship, televised on BBC from time to time, but on a Friday night. I think it's such a good slot. What do you think?
It's fantastic, and as a father of a newborn who's up at all hours of the day and night at the moment, the chance to be able to watch some Championship action is absolutely fantastic. Makes a break from watching Bluey as well, which is quite nice to watch some Championship action. It's an amazing time to have football on as well, I think, because, you know, the rest of the football calendar is kind of dominated by even people who are casual fans will probably watch the Premier League over another Scottish game if it's on. If you've got a captive audience and it's the only game that's on Friday night, you're going to get more eyes on it, and it's brilliant. I absolutely love having Friday night football. What a way to kick off your weekend.
Yeah, it's whether you're going to it, watching it on TV or working at it, it's good. There's everyone wins, I think, out of that. And I've kind of been in every one of those situations, loved every single one of them. This weekend there's actually 2 games on. So we've got Morton against Dundee and Queen's Park against Raith Rovers. That Queen's Park Raith Rovers game is going to be a tasty one. So Raith Rovers haven't lost 12 games. Obviously coming off the back of their Scottish Cup win as well. They're absolutely flying high right now. And Queen's Park, obviously, as we're saying, clinging on to that kind of top spot right now. Morton, another win at the weekend, taking on Dundee. It's so tight at the top right now. It's so competitive, and yeah, really looking forward to this, seeing how it all kind of spans out.
Absolutely, but we didn't really give enough credit to Raith Rovers because, like you said, 12 games unbeaten, but also in the Challenge Cup final after beating Green of the South. But anyway, we'll end on that bombshell. Thanks for listening. If you want to contact us, you can via Twitter at TSFS Podcast. Thank you so much again, Laura, Finn, and Graeme McGarry. We'll be back again next week. So yeah, go and listen to something else now. Bye.